Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We got a really Euro-specific episode this week, obviously with the Euros going on. So we'll be delving into England, their 1-0 win over Serbia, their upcoming game against Denmark as well. And then, we'll dabble with a bit of transfer news with both of our clubs, United and Arsenal, linked with a few players, as well as the Erik Ten Hag stays news that broke a little bit after last week's episode. But before we get into this week's episode, for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share if you can, drop your comments down below. For those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other podcasting platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review if you can. Every little helps and is all appreciated. Jonts, how you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Some of my predictions from last week are not doing so well, but it's all right. We move.
Yeah, we've had a few days of the Euros already. What we're on day 4 now, is it? I think. Or did it start on Friday? So today's day 4.
Started on Friday.
Yeah. So we've had quite a few games already. A few of our picks have looked decent, but both of our picks for winners have both won in different forms and fashion. Germany winning 5-1 against Scotland, absolutely pumped them, and then England 1-0 yesterday. We'll get into that in a bit later, but 2 wins on the board, so it's not that bad. You know what I mean? We don't look absolutely shoddy. We didn't predict Belgium anywhere, so apologies to all our Belgian brothers out there. They suffered a bit of a stinker earlier today. But before we get into the Euros, let's have a quick chat on the latest transfer news, and then obviously the big news coming out of both clubs in this last week. Erik Ten Hag stays. But before we get into it, on that point, let's talk about you guys, Arsenal. It's been a bit quiet, to be honest, hasn't it? Like, obviously, after the last episode dropped, Benjamin Sesko, who was kind of the main player you were linked with, signed a contract extension, so it doesn't look like he's going to go anywhere this summer. And then there've been a couple of really interesting.
He looked good in.
He looked good
in
for
the Slovenia game as well.
Yeah, he did. He looked very lively. And they were kind of unlucky not to get a bit more out of that game. But he looked really good, I have to be honest. And if you compared him to Højlund on the other side, he definitely won that battle. We'll not get into that. He signed the contract extension. So you've been linked with a couple of interesting players in the last week. You've been linked with Guirassy, which I think makes sense. We've talked about him, in previous pods. We've been linked with him as well. So that's the striker option. But you've also been linked with a loan move for Xavi Simons from PSG, used to be at PSV. What do you make of those links? Because obviously the striker one, I think you probably don't want to chat too much about, but the Xavi Simons one is interesting, isn't it?
I mean, it's interesting, but it doesn't make any sense. I think Xavi Simons is a really good player. He's obviously played really well for the Netherlands, actually, yesterday as well, and was really one of their shining stars, alongside a couple of other players. But it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see why we would go for a player like that who is more suited to play in kind of like an attacking midfielder or winger type of role. I don't really see him being a player that's going to lead the line as your number 9. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to go after him, especially with a loan move as well. Like, I mean, we're big bad Arsenal. We're supposed to be going for the title. Going and loaning a player from PSG doesn't doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me unless it's in the middle of the season and we've just lost Martin Odegaard, or if we lost somebody and we're trying to, quickly replace them, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not putting too much stock in that whole, in that whole rumor. Maybe we've, had a little talk with him here and there previously, but I don't see why we would go after him, given our current situation. And then the whole Guirassy thing, I think he's just going to be, he's got to be just one of the people on the shortlist. I know obviously the Sesko news of a contract extension is maybe disappointing, but I don't necessarily think that fully rules him out. I think it just means that, obviously Leipzig are just trying to get a bit more money for him, right? And maybe we won't end up paying that money. Maybe, it's just part of their way to just secure that he stays there. But Guirassy he's going to be on the fringes of the kind of players that I'm looking for at the club. I think he's really good, and I do think that he could do a job for us, but he's not necessarily the first choice I'd like to have. I get it's still June, but if we're already getting down to like the bottom of the rung in terms of like our shortlist, it's a bit worrying for me. So I'm hoping it's just, part of the news that just comes out. It's somebody that we've spoken to, that somebody's figured out that we've been speaking to him, and it's just coming out now. But I do hope he's going to be one of multiple choices that we're looking into, because I'm going to be honest with you, Xavi Simons and Guirassy are not who I was hoping to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a slow transfer market for you guys, to be honest. I mean, and I think the Sesko one was real, and I think the contract extension has kind of taken the wind out of the sails of that a little bit. And I guess your journalists are kind of scraping around to find who else is on those lists, even if they're players who are like, like you said, bottom or Xavi Simons, great prospect, looks really, really good. I can see how he could fit in your team, maybe off the left, cutting in, or maybe in the left-sided 8 role. But yeah, it's not the logical next step of a signing. And as you said, a loan move seems a little bit backwards for a team that's trying to, buy the best young players, develop a team for the long term. It kind of is a very short term move. But he has been linked with I think Bayern are looking at him on loan. So big teams are looking at him on loan. It's not like a complete wild shout. But I just think you guys aren't. You might have thrown your hat in the ring, like you said, because of previous contacts or whatever. But it would be a weird move. It'd be a good one. He's a good player, but it doesn't seem to fit the strategy you guys are going after. And I have to say, probably the same for Guirassy. I don't really think you guys need like kind of experienced 27, 28, 29-year-old striker. I think you need kind of what you've signed in other positions, like a 22, 23, 24-year-old up-and-coming striker who's, he's about to make that upward ascension. Whereas Guirassy, I think, I don't know, just it seems like the fit was better with you guys getting Sesko and us getting Guirassy, that kind of thing, because we've got a young striker already. We need a more experienced one. You've got a Jesus or, kind of a player who's a little bit older in the striker role. You need a younger one. It just seems like the fit's weird.
And if you're a big team today, you're going to go for either an exciting young player that you think is going to, as you say, level up right at your club, or you're going to go for a sure thing, world class in their prime striker, right? And or in both, it could be that they're both of those things, like Haaland, for example, where they're an exciting young player that's going to level up, but they're also a world class striker. And Guirassy, in my mind, doesn't really fit either of those. Like Guirassy to me is like maybe what you'd get if you're Man United or if you're Chelsea, where you've got a young, exciting striker who probably just needs an arm around his shoulder, tell him to calm down a bit. So I think Guirassy fits that mold, but I don't see where that fits into our team unless we're trying to bring him in to teach Nketiah how to be a striker. I don't know where that comes from. So it's a weird one, and I don't want anyone to think I'm talking down on Guirassy as if he's a terrible player, because he's really good, and I've watched his highlights in the Bundesliga this season. And he's been amazing. But it's just not necessarily the move you want from a club who's supposed to be in the ascendancy, supposed to be trying to get into that number one role in arguably the most competitive league in the world. So, I mean, again, both of them they have value in their own ways, but it just doesn't make sense based off of the situation we're in today. I will say, though, Kai Havertz did not make sense last season to me either, and to a lot of other Arsenal fans. And it seems to have worked out all right. Jury's still out, still needs a couple of seasons of actually being good for me to fully believe in him. But for the most part, he's kind of proven a couple of people wrong. So maybe we're going to do that again, but that's not the general strategy I want my club going for, right? Weird left field signings that turn out to be all right in the end. I can take a couple of those, but I'm not doing that every season as our biggest signing. Come on now.
Yeah, that can't be a consistent strategy. Like
No.
all the top managers had a couple wild shouts where the fan base and the media were like, "What the heck is he doing here?" But you can't make it a consistent pattern, right? Fergie had them, Wenger had them, Mourinho had them. All the Peps had a few, Klopp's definitely had a few, but you can't make it a consistent thing. So yeah, Havertz is a good point though. Maybe maybe Havertz will be the number 9 going forward, and then the
Also, I saw some reports come out about that. I saw a couple of reports come out saying we're not in the market for a striker. We're going to stick with Kai Havertz. I'm not going to tell you what I said when I saw some of those stories, but I don't know if that goes down well in the Arsenal camp right now. I think if it ends up being the way that we go for it, I know already the stat that they're going to pick out, which is in the last 17 games or whatever, he scored 14 goals or something for his club and country. I know that people are going to start parroting that if this is how we end up being. But let's all be honest with ourselves. At the beginning of this transfer window, that is not what we were hoping to happen. So if that is how we go for it, then I don't know. I'm going to have to take that leap of faith with Arteta, but it's not where I want to be.
Well, yeah, you're just kind of taking a continued step on that leap of faith, aren't you? Like,
Yes.
You've already had to take the leap of faith on him in the first place. How many Arsenal fans didn't want
Exactly.
Kai Havertz in the first place? So you're kind of just asking people to dig deeper in that bag, in that well of faith, and just hope that he's the guy to get you across the line. But no, I hear you. It's been a slow transfer week, guys. I'll be honest. We've made an actual bid though. I will say.
United. How are you feeling about that one, mate?
Yeah, I get that Ineos want to come in and try and address some of the issues we've had with overpaying, but £35 million bid for Branthwaite
that's a straight reject.
Yeah, that's one of those that when you play FM, you just kind of set it to reject all offers at a certain price because that's bordering taking the PISS of Everton. I know they've got financial problems, but yeah, that's beyond cheeky. So yeah, I mean, it was good to see that we finally activated in the market and we're actually trying to do something, but it kind of stinks a little bit of naivety to go in and offer 35 million. I've read some stories saying that we're going back in straight away with a 60 million second offer.
That's a weird negotiating tactic right there.
Yeah, the spike on first bid to second bid just. Again, that strikes of naivety the other way. You've gone 35 and you've almost doubled it with your second bid. That's not negotiation, guys. Like, it's worrying the stories that I'm hearing. So yeah, I think eventually we will get the deal done, but I fear that we will get more close to what Everton are asking for, and less close to what we would ideally like to be paying, which probably is around that £60 million mark. I've also seen some reports saying this could all be like rope-a-dope and we're actually going to like pivot and go and get Matthias de Ligt from Bayern Munich for 40-odd million instead. But I would personally prefer Branthwaite. But the price, I think, is going to dictate what we do in this case, because apparently I've seen Romano and the other ITKs all say we've got like 4 or 5 guys on the list, and Ten Hag's happy with all of them. So it's just a case of financially what makes the most sense and kind of where they fall down on the priority list, like you were talking about your guys and the strikers. Clearly, Branthwaite is top. Then probably like the other guys we've mentioned previously, Todibo, De Ligt is obviously on there as well. Lenny Yoro, there's a few guys on there, but obviously Branthwaite's the one that's top of the list. And yeah, I would be happy with that signing. I was saying to you guys on the group chat, I would be happy with Branthwaite. a cheeky little, give him some shout out, some praise for yesterday's performance, I would take Gahey as well. It's not a prisoner of the moment thing. I think sitting next to Lissandro at left centre back, I think Gahey would do a decent job. I mean, he played left centre back yesterday and he was pretty good, but I think he'd be good on the right hand side. But it doesn't look like we're in for him, and it looks like Branthwaite is the guy they want to get. But yeah, just the negotiation stuff and the way Ineos have moved in the last couple of weeks have kind of shaken the fan base's enthusiasm that we had originally when they came in and signing all these best in class guys. The way things have gone over the last couple of weeks have made us go, "Oh, are you the Glazers in disguise?" type vibe. You know what I mean? They've been moving been a bit weird.
And I think we're going to get into this in a minute, so we can talk about it in more depth. But there's definitely a feeling that I'm getting from this whole Ineos-led Man United that Sir Jim is making all the shots. He's calling all the shots. You know what I mean? Like, you've gone and got this Omar Don, you've gone and got Jason Wilcox, you've got these people. Ideally, they know how to run a football club quite well based off of their previous experience, whereas I would say Ineos maybe don't, based off of their previous experience, right? And you'd think that they would behave in a slightly different manner, right? Like this whole 35 million immediately to 60 million, or the 35 million as a rope-a-dope to go and get De Ligt is kind of weird, based off of what I've seen from previous, let's say, clubs and their management in terms of behaviour in the transfer market. So I don't know if you have this feeling as well, and we'll talk about it with the whole Ten Hag staying, but there's definitely a feeling I'm getting that, Sir Jim is really just saying, all right, Jason, go and get him and say 35 million is how much you're going to pay for it. And that would make more sense in the fact that it seems to be a bit more scattered, a bit weird in terms of how they're behaving. What do you think of that? Do you think that it's, these decisions to go and get bid for Branthwaite for 35 million are coming from the Jason Wilcoxes of the world and the Omar Baradas, or do you think this is a Sir Jim special?
I don't think it's a Sir Jim special, but I do think we haven't got the structure right yet. Like, we haven't got everyone in place that we want to be doing certain things. So we've got Wilcox in, Barada's starting on the 1st of July, but I think he's kind of undercover working already by the judge, judging how some of these things are going. I think he's definitely, kind of lining things up for when he officially starts on July the 1st, but technically he's not in role. And then you have the whole Dan Ashworth debacle where we're still trying to work out his severance with Newcastle. So ideally, I think you would have Barada in telling Ashworth what we need to do financially. Ashworth goes in, speaks to the management, speaks to Wilcox, speaks to the scouts. They're their little transfer committee, and they decide on, what position we need to target, and then draft up a list of what players fit the style of play they want Ten Hag to play. And I don't think we have that at the moment. So it might be the case of what you've said, like, so Jim's involved. I know Jean-Claude Blanc is the acting CEO until Barada comes in. I think Wilcox is stepping up and taking on a bit more responsibility while Ashworth is not in. So it's a bit all over the shop, which is why I think this internal review with Ten Hag took longer and was a bit of a show, and why this bidding stuff with Branthwaite is going a little bit left, if you know what I mean, in terms of, like, you don't normally see a club going 35 million and then suddenly the next one is 60. That's really, really alternative negotiation, right? We always see it go kind of in increments, unless you see a scenario like with Caicedo last season where Liverpool just slap him like £100 million bid out of the blue, and then you can see things scale up quite quickly. As far as I know, I haven't heard about any other offers going for Branthwaite, so it's interesting and kind of strange to see us do that kind of tactic. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird time for United when it comes to all of these really big decisions.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, Mr. Erik Ten Hag in Mallorca or Ibiza or wherever he was had a cheeky little visit, didn't he? And he's apparently staying at Man United. So
yeah, Ten Hag stays.
What's your viewpoint on that, mate?
Yeah, no, I'm happy about it. I said before on previous eps, I understand why a lot of the fan base are sceptical. I understand why Ineos themselves were sceptical. I understand that it was not good viewing in the league in particular last season, but also the Champions League as well. So he had, I think, very justified question marks over his position, but at the same time, I think he's had valid reasons why things have been difficult. I think he deserves a bit more time, and I feel like it would have been really harsh to dump him after 2 seasons. If you look at Mourinho, he got, was it 3 seasons or at least 2.5? And he was actually causing madness behind the scenes at the club with all of our players. And then, yeah, Van Gaal, I think, was probably quite harshly done by after 2 seasons. So I think I'm one of the, I don't know if it's the minority or majority anymore, judging by how like flip-floppy a lot of our fan base is, but I think it's the right decision. And I think keeping him there, let him do another, a season at the club is a lot more, it makes a lot more sense when it comes to all the instability I've just talked about with the backroom staff and all this kind of stuff going on. I think you just keep the coach in for this next season. I don't, you can ask me about the contract extension stuff, and I might have a different answer to that argument.
I've got two questions then. Well, I've got two questions then, right? Like, first of all, what do you make of the way that they've done it, right? Because there's a lot coming out about how he got a nice little visit on his doorstep saying, hey, you're going to stay at Man United, and apparently you are the best man for the job. We've checked the market. You know that we checked the market, and you're still the best man for the job. What do you make of the way that they delivered the news and his response to it?
Well, this goes back to what Ineos, like, it's tied into the whole transfer negotiation thing. I think that was a weird move. I don't think it's a weird move to do your little internal review. I don't think it's a weird move to maybe consider other options. I do think it's been weird how they've gone about it. So all these things going out in the media that they're meeting all these guys. So Jim's meeting Tuchel in Monaco. He's already met McKenna. He's done all these different things. And then, after all this uncertainty, you suddenly rock up at Ten Hag's Airbnb in Ibiza and say, yo, actually, we want to stick with you. We don't want to, I know you've been seeing the rumours, but we still love you, man. We want you to stay as a manager. I don't agree with that. And I think that could have been handled better. I think Ten Hag had a quote saying Ineos are new to football, so they're still trying to get their feet under the table. I wish that was true.
My man is unhinged, by the way.
He's lost it. I love
Ten Hag after dark, like Ten Hag unleashed.
Ten Hag uncut. Yeah, Ten Hag uncut is. I love it actually. I'm here for it. I like it when his jaw starts swinging and he starts to lose his cool and gets a little bit more Dutch, and lets loose and is a bit more direct about things. But yeah, I mean, what he said, back to the comment thing about Ineos being new to football, they're not that new to football. They've been at Nice for 4 or 5 years or whatever the period of time they've been at. They've had Lausanne for a bit in Switzerland. They're not complete novices. But I do think they've found out the hard way.
Like they are.
Yeah, I do think they found out the hard way that it's not going to be that easy to go and turn this around and do the backroom staff rebuild that they wanted to do. Even though I agree that it's the right thing to do, and I don't disagree with the end decisions they've made so far in almost every scenario, I do think the way they've gone about it has made it look like they've either been completely unprepared, taken completely off guard, or were maybe a bit complacent and thought, oh, I can just go and take Wilcox from Southampton, no problem. I can take Dan Ashworth from Newcastle, no problem. I can go and take
I do think
all these things, and it's not like
that. I do think they don't realise the level that they're operating with Man United, right? Like, you might be able to go and do a couple of things quietly when you're with Nice or Lausanne, right? You can go and talk to a couple of managers here and there, and no one's going to figure it out. With Man United, you've got a microscope on you at all times, right? So they're going to magnify every mistake, every wrong move you make is going to be really built up. Everyone's going to see it. Everything's going to happen in the light of day. And this is probably where they're figuring out the hard way. This ain't Nice no more. Like, we need to be smarter about how we move. Every mistake we make is going to be under the magnifying glass. We've got to figure this out. And so, I mean, even this whole Ten Hag saga, right? The fact that he's come out and said, they came to my doorstep, they said I'm the best manager. Even that's probably stuff they maybe didn't want to hear in the media. They didn't want to be so public. So I think based on how they treated Ten Hag, he's probably going to be a little bit less media trained than he was previously, and they're going to have all sides of the coin, all sides of the media, all sides of everybody really looking at what they're doing very carefully. So I think that the quicker they can get this structure in place and the quicker they can start behaving like, a flawless football club, the better it will be for them, because Man United ain't easy. I think everybody knows that. As much as it pains other clubs and other fans, we ain't Man United. We ain't got to deal with all the stuff that you've got to deal with on a daily basis from all the media. So I definitely agree. I think it's a weird way to behave. I do agree with the overall decision that came out of it. I think Ten Hag is the best option. I don't know if he's the best manager necessarily, but he's the best option you've got based off of what's available in the market today. And it's going to be interesting to see Ten Hag unleashed next season.
It reminds me of the Ronaldinho meme where he's licking his lips and rubbing his hands like that. That's
exactly
how I'm approaching this season with Ten Hag, because I feel like we got to see a little flavor of it last season, but it was too little to get us to go, you know what, I'm gonna back this. Like, he would whinge about little particular things, and you go, okay, come on, bro. But then you're also saying things that make no sense at all. If he just completely loses it and just comes out and just says what he's thinking and what we're thinking all the time, then I'm here for it. It's
going to be the Ralph Rangnick version of Ten Hag.
Yeah, but slightly aggy, because Ralph was too nice. I get a little bit more kind of like niggle from Ten Hag, and so I think he's this Ten Hag uncut is going to be one I can get down with. I can get jiggy with this version of him, and let's see how it goes.
I mean, based off of the contract extension, you might have Ten Hag uncut for a lot longer. What do you make of that? Giving him a couple extra years, mate.
This is the thing. So I've heard a couple of people talk about it. The Ten Hag outers are like losing their mind because they're going, "Oh my god, all right, sticking with him in the first place, I can't take, but giving him another extra 2 years or whatever it is just, why are you doing this to us?" And then I've also seen some people go, "Look, guys, if there is going to be a new contract, I'm sure there'll be clauses in there that if he flops in the first 6 months, they can let go of him for a lot cheaper than his current contract, and there'll be it'll be heavily clause based where they can get out of things, and essentially a contract means nothing." I just think the optics are weird. So that I can understand both sides, and the latter argument's probably the most logical, right? I think the former one's based on emotion. Why are you giving them a contract when we finished 8th, -1 goal difference, all that kind of stuff? But the second one is probably closer to reality, in that it keeps him locked in for a while, so they've not got to worry about him just deciding, you know what, deuces, I've had enough of you guys at the end of next season. Let's say he does really well and they want to keep him, and then he can leave for free. But also, if he does really badly and they need to address it earlier than the end of the season, they probably don't want to pay 10 million or whatever his penalty clause is in his current contract. So there's going to be ways that it's going to be beneficial to both parties, but I get it. It looks smelly. It looks like one FA Cup final has made them go, at the end of the day, stick with Ten Hag, and now we're suddenly, both feet on board, which seems a little bit reactionary to say the least. So I'm kind of struggling with how it looks and what it actually means. But I personally, I would have just kept him on his current contract, let him see out the season, and then if he really is bought in, you're probably going to have to pay a heftier wage, but at least it looks like he's earned it. Whereas right now, it feels like we're kind of we're rewarding someone for just winning the FA Cup final, but having an all-time stinky rest of the season.
I think we got to look at it from a business perspective, right? You never want to let the other side have too much power, right? And in the case of contract signing, he's just come off of a smelly season in terms of 8th in the Premier League, -1 goal difference. Of course, you got the trophy, but overall, on balance, he can't come out and ask for too much, right? So when it comes to a contract negotiation, he's going to say, all right, give me a couple extra years, give me a little bit of a bump on my pay, put in a couple of extra clauses here and there that make you happy, but, I'll take what I can get. You have to think about it as if you get to the end of next season and he's done a better job, he's got you into let's say the top 4 again, and I don't know, maybe got you a trophy or whatever else, right? if he has a good season for you, you are in the worst possible negotiating position, because he's going to come and say, you want to keep me? I don't have to stay anymore. There's no financial penalty for me leaving. You want to keep me? You've got to give me the big bucks. You've got to give me, a very nice contract. And I think we all need to take that into account when it comes to players, when it comes to managers. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to give them a new contract, sure. But if they're in the situation that Ten Hag is in, whether it's a player or a manager, and there's some value to them, it's better off negotiating when they have a little bit less power than to let it get to the point where, oh crap, he's just gone and won us something. All of the fans love him. And now we've got to go and pay him 500 grand a week or whatever it might be to keep him around. So I can see it from both sides. I think the optics do look terrible. And I think had they just been a bit more proactive about all of this, and maybe it was in May, June, early June when they signed this, and it wasn't, the whole FA Cup debacle, I think it would have overall looked a bit better to the fans and looked a bit better in general. But overall, it's probably the smart business decision to make. You don't need a manager in their last year of contract at your team when you're trying to rebuild things, right? You need a bit more stability than that. So I get it. It kind of all of the decisions they've made, probably makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. And I think every season we're seeing managers and the movement of managers and the way we deal with managers and coaches in football kind of shifting over to a very similar model that we currently, use for players, which is, you're seeing managers now having almost transfer fees. I know we don't call them transfer fees, but they're being bought out of contracts. Clubs getting large chunks of compensation in the millions. And then now we're also, back in the days, I think Sir Alex Ferguson was on like a rolling contract every year. There was no worry about, he's going to leave or whatever. I know it's a special case, but a lot of managers were often on shorter deals because there was a bit of faith-based and managers weren't being treated like players.
Yeah, loyalty, trust, less
but
of a
you see
business.
now, it's very true. Ten Hag's in his last year of his deal. Well, how do we treat players in the last year of the deal? Often they get a big new contract. Look what, and if not, they get a renewal. And then if they do well in their last year, the club's kind of over the barrel, like Rashford had United and gets 300k because he has an amazing season, and then he has the power and the leverage. So I hear it. That's probably a logical way to look at it. So yeah, all those United fans out there losing their cool about Ten Hag staying and then signing the contract, just listen back to that little segment or watch a bunch of other content creators who are talking about it from that perspective. I think that's probably where Ineos and United are coming from. All right, let's get into our Euros chat then, Johns. England won, Serbia 0 in the first group game of the Euros 2024. It was a game of two halves, pardon the pun and the cliche, but it really was. The first half, England, I think people are overselling this. England were like dominant and crazy, and they had more of the ball. They dominated the ball, and Serbia was sitting deep. I think it was kind of by design that was the case. I think Serbia didn't try and press or do anything kind of proactive in that first half. So England had a lot more of the ball. I don't think we had loads of chances. I think Kyle Walker had one where he kind of shot crossed it quickly after the Bellingham goal. But other than that, I think there wasn't too much goal mouth action. And then, second half, Serbia, their manager went for it. He brought on loads of subs early on. And
Tadic
they kind of,
Tadic,
Ilic looked really good as well, the midfielder. Jovic came on and put himself about. And Serbia completely flipped the script and had England sitting deep for almost the whole second half. And the Kane header on the bar was kind of a great save by the goalie, by the way, Ratchkovic. Was kind of against the run of play. There wasn't too much coming from England's attack. But what did you make, first of all, of the performance as a whole? And are you worried about that second half performance? Because if you listen to the media right now, it's kind of hypercritical.
Negative.
There's not too many people. There's a few people I see who keep saying, "Oh, don't forget we won. England won 1-0." But there's a lot of criticism about the performance. So, you worried about that second half?
Not worried per se. I think it was an experiment, right? We obviously saw Trent start in the centre midfield position. I think, I'll be honest with you, he had a terrible game from my point of view. He was very wasteful. And, you know, the whole sentiment that Gary Neville put around, like, if it was France, if it was Brazil or Argentina, they'd build the team around him and find a way to get him in. No, they wouldn't. They really, really wouldn't, right? Like, you can't just be an absolute wonder of a right foot and be able to put balls into dangerous positions and do absolutely nothing else. Because Kevin De Bruyne can do other things as well. He can shoot, he can pass, he defends quite well, he runs around, he's an engine. He does a lot, right? Building your team around somebody who offers not just an absolute wonder of a right foot, but also a couple of other things too, fine. But this whole narrative of Trent, you know, find a way to get him into the team is rubbish. I'm sorry to say he's not that level for us to be trying to force someone into the team like that, especially when he's given performances like he was yesterday, where he's given the ball away a lot, a couple of good passes here and there and some cross-field pingers and stuff like that. But nah, we can't be doing that. So I think from my perspective, it was an experiment. I think as a result of it, we didn't play all that well. You know, even in the first half, where we did have quite a lot of possession of the ball, many of the times where we didn't have possession of the ball, it came because of a silly mistake from somebody like Trent. So genuinely, I don't read too much into it. I think if we're going to do that kind of performance against Serbia and still come out and win, fine. But we need to start figuring out how we're going to play, because I'll be honest with you, that experiment didn't go well for me, like from my point of view, from a lot of different angles, right? Foden on the left-hand side, again, ineffective, right? Not very much coming from that area. He's not demanding to get on the ball. He's not really doing anything, right? It's players like Bellingham that are really pulling us up, you know, by the, you know, I guess by, in this case, just on his own to get us over the line. So, you know, I'm not going to buy in too much to the hypercritical thing, because I don't think it was necessarily like a confirmed team where we were like, yeah, this is the team that's going to win us the Euros, right? I think it was an experiment, so I can understand and kind of allow for not a great performance. But I do think we're going to have to find out how we want to play and stick to a way of playing consistently from here on out. And if we line up with Trent again in that position, and we line up with Foden on the left-hand side again, and we don't perform well again, then we've got to start asking questions of like, why are you continuing to do this, Southgate? Right? So, yeah, I'm not putting too much stock into one game on its own. But if we see continuous patterns of what he's trying to do here, and it ends up with bad performances and scraping wins over teams that we should beat comfortably, then I do think questions need to be asked. The issue you've got in tournament football is you ain't got a lot of opportunities. You get a couple of games here and there, and if you don't play well, you're out. And going out in the group stages would be disastrous for us, right? Even going out early in the knockout stages would be disastrous for us. So, yeah, not too much in this one, but if I see him line up like that again and we play poorly, then I do think questions need to be asked. What about you? You think it's the world is falling, the sky is falling right now?
Nah, I mean, first of all, my expectations for this team are to play like that. Like I can't recall too many England performances where from start to finish we've absolutely dazzled. Like, it just doesn't happen. It's very much a team that performs in moments and has so much quality that are able to kind of basically pull us out the mire if the team's not working as a unit. And I think it's harsh to go in on the team this much after the first game, because probably Serbia are the hardest group, team in this group. If we're going to be completely honest, Denmark are decent, but you saw them against Slovenia the other day. I would say Slovenia might be the third best, and then Denmark might be the worst in terms of how they performed in this first game week. So I think no one needs to press all the panic buttons or whatever. But if you are not a Southgate outer, but if you're a Southgate doubter, let's say, this is just adds a little bit more evidence to what you already kind of know about him as a manager and the way he sets up his team. Because I definitely do think, quote that Ten Hag came out with, because I think he was doing, was it Dutch TV, also covering or some sort of TV punditry's job, which I thought was funny that he did that in the first place. But he said kind of Southgate gets the goal 1-0 up, and then he sits back and retreats, and he kind of goes into his shell and does whatever. which, to be honest, is a fair criticism. I think that's how a lot of us would say Southgate manages. He very rarely gets a goal and then keeps going and gets a second and a third and a fourth. It's just ironic to come from Ten Hag because he's been his managerial performance hasn't been the greatest in this past season. But yeah, I was not shocked to see the first half go the way that it did. I feel like there were definitely issues. I think you might be being slightly harsh on Trent. I don't think he was great, but I don't think he was like terrible. I just think it's just he's not an 8. I think the truth of the matter, he's not an 8 or a 6 or he's not a midfielder.
He's not a central player.
Yeah, he's not a central player.
I wouldn't want to see him in a central part of the pitch at all.
No. And I remember when speaking to football coaches and different people that are involved in the game, they always talk a lot about how the midfield is one of the hardest positions to play because you've always got a blind spot. Like if you're in defense, or in goal, you're pretty much not going to have.
You play in front, left,
everything
right,
in front
and that's it.
Exactly, and a midfielder has to check his mirrors. Big up filthy fellas. He needs to check his mirrors. They always need to look, and I think that was clear in that game yesterday. Every time he was collecting the ball and he was back to the opposition, he had no clue what was going on around him. He wasn't scanning, he wasn't checking. He was just like a completely a duck out of water. He was just not. You could tell it wasn't his instinct to do that. And I think eventually, as many people have said, if we persevere with this midfield, Trent in midfield, it's going to come back and kill us. Because a better team, a more threatening team, a team that presses even more front foot than Serbia, which I don't think is their normal game, right? Let's say it's even a Holland or a Germany under Nagelsmann, for example, yeah, with Wirtz and Musiala and these young whippersnappers coming up and pressing him. He stands no chance. He's
going to get dispossessed in our third, in the closest third to the England goal, and they're going to punish us for it. And this is exactly the criticism I have of him, which is attention span. He's got an attention span like Ramsdale at this point, where he touches the ball, it's a bit of a crap touch. He thinks no one's around him, someone just comes in and nicks the ball off of him, right? Or he doesn't know where his own players are, misplaces a pass to them. And I think if you contrast that with the way Bellingham played yesterday, every single time he got the ball, if he didn't know what was behind him, he at least had the strength to quickly turn. And the amount of times that I saw him get the ball and then turn a man who went flying past him the other way and completely swivel in the opposite direction, that is how you play a central position, or particularly a midfield central position. And I think you saw the major differences in what a central position has to do. But if you looked at Bellingham and if you looked at Trent yesterday, and I'm gonna be honest with you, like it makes way more sense for me to have Bellingham sit in that second in that 8 role next to Rice with that ability to do that, right? And that's the same thing for Kobe, right? Kobe is able to swivel, he's able to look around him, he's able to get out of tight spaces. And that's what you want from that player that's going to be next to Rice, right? He's able to progress the ball up the pitch afterwards. So he's going to beat a man very quickly and then play one forward. Now, with Trent, it only makes sense if you play Trent in this deep lying kind of role. If you've got 2 midfielders in front of him who are running all over the place and will get back as much as they get forward, it doesn't make sense to have him sat next to Rice, who's getting isolated by himself and having to do pretty much all of the defensive work and the awareness work, and just let him spray balls to who? Because at the end of the day, like it doesn't make any sense. I'd rather see Bellingham pulled back a little bit, stick Foden in front of him, and then let Gordon go on the left-hand side and just run at people. Because what I'm not seeing from Foden right now is going down the wing. We have wingers for a reason. Saka yesterday caused so many problems for that left back. And you made a funny point, which is like, how have people not figured out what Saka does at this point, right? But he's continually is able to do that and cause massive amounts of problems for these left backs. So what do you want to do? Do you want to have Foden coming in and just encroaching on the space that Bellingham's creating in that kind of 10 role? Or do you want a Gordon who's going to run for it down the touchline and get to the byline and cross one in for Harry Kane, for example, to get his head on? Because in another day, goalkeeper don't make that save and that goes in. So it's clear from my point of view, or Bellingham, right? Like all of our goals, a lot of our goals are going to come from wingers getting to the byline, cutting one back or crossing one over the top for Kane to get onto, or for Bellingham to get onto, or for Foden in this case to like Odegaard one, stroke one into the back, into the bottom right corner, right? That's going to make sense. But what we're doing here, I don't know why you'd play Trent if you're not going to have Saka, Kane, and then someone like Gordon trying to get in behind players, or like a Rashford, for example, or somebody else like a Watkins. That's where it makes sense. Protect him with 2 players in front of him, get him the ball, let him have a couple of blockers in front of him, and let him spray balls out to the left-hand side, right-hand side, and over the top. But in this case, it doesn't make any sense to have him playing these balls to who? Because at the end of the day, Saka prefers to get it into feet, right? Do a couple of shimmies here and there, and then get to the byline. Foden just wants to cut inside and be a 10, basically. So, yeah, like I'm not going to blame Trent too much, but this system that we're playing doesn't suit him, first of all. And if we do have to get to a point where we play a system specifically built for Trent, I think we're not going to play our best football. I think there is a better kind of football we can be playing with him, unfortunately, not on the pitch, right? So that's just my main thing. I'm not saying that Trent is the worst player ever, but this system doesn't suit him. He needs a system built around his abilities, which are, he only needs to be able to look one way. He shouldn't have to worry about anyone behind him, anyone from left or right. He just needs to get the ball, have a bunch of flipping offensive linemen in front of him, and let him just spray balls over left and right.
The thing about it, right, and I feel a bit bad for him because he's a quality player, and he has lots and lots of huge plus points as a player, and you can see what he's achieved already at that young age, right? So I'm not trying to do the Scouse hate stuff on him, but I do think because people have hammered him so hard for the defensive work, which I think sometimes has gone over the top. Don't get me wrong. I think he's poor defensively, but I don't think it's because he can't defend. I think it's because he doesn't want to. So I distinguish that and think it's not the same level of criticism. When you're telling someone who can't do something and you're hammering them all the time, then I feel like, okay, maybe that's going over the top or whatever. But with Trent, I feel like people hammer him because they know he can do it. We've seen him defend at different points, and he's shown ability to do it. But I think because people believe he can't do it, they think this right back Trent stuff needs to end and he needs to go in midfield. What I would implore those people to think about is a midfielder needs to defend too. So when you put him in midfield, it's not like he doesn't need to defend, and that's gonna, unless look, guys, even at this point, if you're looking for a striker, you're still asking your striker to track back and do stuff. So there is no position on the field that exists anymore where it's totally okay to not defend. So what you need to do is think about a system that's going to actually protect Trent as much as possible and not make him have to defend it, and make him defend the least bit possible, which unfortunately for Southgate and this setup is the actual way that Klopp was playing in, which was at right back, and then you have 2 midfielders who've got engines, right? The best Liverpool that we've seen in 30, 40 years or whatever is literally the one with Trent at right back, Henderson and Wijnaldum in midfield, who've got 3 lungs, Park Ji-sung, big him up, along them lines, just running up and down, and covering him when he goes forward. And I actually think that Rice and Bellingham can do that. And it's not going to take away anything from Bellingham if you play him as an 8. It won't. There's plenty of 8s that have been box to box that have gone, and he's got the energy and the physicality to be able to do that. And it shouldn't take away from his ability to ghost in like he did yesterday and score headers and score goals. You've seen Lampard originally, right? The Chelsea Lampard was in an 8, and he would ghost into that edge of the box, come in and score goals. And I know they experimented later with Drogba, with Frank behind him as like kind of an attacking midfielder, but originally he was an 8, and with Ballack and Makaleli behind them. So I can't see why we can't do that with our current midfield. And if you want to get Trent in there, get him in at right back. And I certainly think against Serbia they could have done that. There was no threat going over the top over Walker's shoulder. You didn't need to play Walker at right back yesterday. You just didn't. You could have played Trent at right back and he would have been okay. But I get it, against Mbappe or against someone where there's a legitimate threat over the top, I understand why you might just have to sit Trent out for that game. Unfortunately, that's just the case. You can't play him in that game, but he can play against other ones where him picking the lock from right back is actually really effective. But yeah, I just think it's not right now. The setup's not right. But I'm going to give Southgate a bly for it. I'm not going to hammer him for it. This squad is massively different compared to all the other squads he's had. It wasn't going to just like work perfectly straight away and be seamless. And if you're going to test things out, I agree with you. You try and test them out in friendlies. But if not, the first few games, as long as you're not playing one of the big boys, you've got that license to do it. And
we have the benefit of not the strongest group. So
yeah, exactly.
I get it, but
I think the thing we should talk about though, more on I think Trent thing is kind of not really his fault. It's a system, like you said. But we can put some question marks on Kane and Foden yesterday because those two were pretty smelly. Foden in particular, he stunk up the joint. I don't know what he was doing. Like he was kind of ghosting almost right next to Saka at one point, like on the right hand side. What the hell are you doing there when you're supposed to be a left winger? And I just feel like in the second half in particular, he didn't show any of the skill set and the abilities that we see him at City, which is when you play the ball up to him, he's press resistant, he can wriggle out of problems. He just lost the ball loads. And he was just trying to shift it really quickly and just losing the ball in stupid ways. And I don't think he got too much coverage in terms of people criticizing or asking questions of him. And I feel like people might be missing the trick. What did you think of Kane and Foden's games in particular?
I'm going to give Kane a bly, right? And this is with the context that I was in the group chat yesterday saying, look at the difference in sentiment between Kane when he does nothing versus Haaland in the Premier League when he does nothing, right? They were saying, oh, all it takes is one touch for Kane and he'll get a goal. We don't need to worry about him. He doesn't need to do anything else. He just needs to, be there. And if he gets an opportunity, he'll put one in the back of the net, right? Whereas with Haaland, it's, he's a League Two player. He doesn't do anything apart from offer you that one chance. If you get one, he's going to put it in the back of the net. So despite that context, I genuinely don't think Kane had a terrible game, right? I think he had really one major opportunity, which if we're going to be harsh to him, he needs to put far away from the goalkeeper. I don't understand why he heads it straight into the goalkeeper because it's pretty much uncontested at that point, right? But for the most part, he got it on target and the goalkeeper pulled off an amazing save. So I can't blame him too much for that, right? So from that point of view, other than that, he didn't get a whole lot of opportunities, right? He didn't really get the ball into feet very often. That's not really the way that we were playing yesterday. So I can't blame him all that much for that, right? Because the one opportunity that he did have, he did all right, right? But for Foden, again, I don't know if it's a system problem or a Foden problem or whatever it is, but Foden on the left wing in a non-Man City system just does not work, man. He's not a winger, right? Like if you want him to be playing in that position, you have to accept that he's not going to go to the byline. He's not going to really use that left-hand side channel all that much. He's going to cut in. He's going to play the ball. He's going to essentially try and get into the center of the pitch and try and thread balls like Odegaard type of player. And that's not what we need in this system. That's not what we need in this team. So the system doesn't flatter him. He's not a good left winger in this system. In Man City's system, he can maybe play that because really their wingers aren't really wingers, right? For the most part, they're kind of more central than a winger and they don't really use those channels all that much, right? They let the left back and right back, if they need to, get into positions. But for the most part, they're all floating around, really just playing balls into feet over and over again, short passes here, there and everywhere. Under Southgate's system, that's not how we're going to play, right? Rice and Bellingham are not really ball to feet, tiki-taka types of players. So he's not really going to fit in there. So he's not really going to play as a left winger. We're going to have 2 10s essentially, and then Saka just on the right-hand side by himself. So we're really not using that channel at all. Whereas in the friendly, I can't remember who it was against, but in the friendly where Gordon was playing, he didn't get a goal or an assist, but he was causing real problems for that right back, the same way that Saka was causing real problems for the left back yesterday. And that's what you want. Let's occupy some of that left back and right back, keep them out on the wings, let people like Bellingham float into the box if he needs to, get headers, let Kane use his size, etc., etc. But, I'm not going to put all of it on Foden, but he was not good yesterday. He clearly hasn't figured out how to adapt to a left wing role in a non-Pep system. And at the same time, this is not a system that I think is ever going to benefit him, is ever going to really show him as being a great player, because he's not Messi. As much as we want to say that he's the most talented English player we've ever seen, he's not Messi, right? You can't stick him anywhere on the pitch and just give him the ball and he's going to dribble past 100 man. He's not. He needs some catering to make him really shine. And the system that we did yesterday was not the right catering to let him shine, from my point of view. I might be being harsh, but Foden ain't going to play his best football in that system that we were playing yesterday. And this is where some sacrifices might have to be made, right? If you really like Bellingham in that 10 role, maybe you just can't play Foden, man. Maybe you've got to play Gordon. Foden rides bench for a little bit, right? And just like you said, if we're playing a France or if we're playing a specific team where having a Foden in the team makes more sense as the 10, then let's do that, right? But this style that we played yesterday, it's not going to work. And I'm tired of hearing that Foden can play wherever and he's just the best player ever. No, he needs to play in the 10, and ideally against a low block type of team where he's going to be able to unlock little through balls here and there. But I don't want to see him against these teams, and I don't want to see him in a left wing role.
Yeah, I'm actually more critical because I think the point you're making. I get it. There's some things that are outside of his control, and whether he probably doesn't want to play left wing and Southgate's just putting him there, I don't know. But I'm sorry, in these kind of moments, this is when your big stars need to rise. Your Bellingham's, Foden, Kane, right? Everyone's been cracking on with that same played out point all the time, saying, "Oh, we got the best player in the Premier League, the best player in the Bundesliga, the best player in La Liga." And I'll be real, only the best player in La Liga rose, and a player who wasn't touted as one of the best players in the league last season, Saka as well. Like, I know we rate Saka very highly, but on form wise, he's definitely had better seasons, right? Like, he wasn't in the conversation for best player in the league last season, and he shone more than Foden did, and Bellingham shone. And I just think Foden needs to show me something, because there are moments definitely in the league where I feel like he's improved and he, was impactful for City and he was probably the best player this season. But I don't think he consistently showed up in big moments in big games. I know he scored a couple goals in the West Ham game in the last game of the season, and that's probably the only one that sticks out in my memory. But I'm thinking Champions League against Real Madrid, he didn't. I know he scored a cracker in the first leg, but I don't remember him doing anything in the second leg. When they needed someone to step up. In the cup final, he was basically non-existent. Didn't really turn up at all. And then in big moments previously for England, I've only remembered Saka kind of standing out, Kane standing out. Previously, obviously, it was Sterling. Even I think Rashford's had more kind of explosive moments for England at tournaments than him. So I need him to do something, because at the moment it's a lot of chat, like you're saying. And I think the media has kind of almost forced Southgate's hand with both Trent and Foden. This idea that you play Trent regardless, this idea that you play Foden regardless. Look, I agree with you completely. Eze or Gordon would have been way better on that left wing, cutting in with a right foot and doing something. I kind of understand the logic in that Trippier's a right-footed left back, so maybe he was going with Foden because he's a natural left-footed left winger who might go out on the outside, but he literally did not do that once yesterday. So that destroys that theory. So yeah, I just felt like he dropped an absolute stinker yesterday, and had it not been for Bellingham standing up, Saka had a really good game for 60 minutes. I will say he kind of faded after that. Like, he got the better of that left back. Yeah, he got better of that left back for the whole first half, and then the beginning of the second half, and then there was a clear moment where he gassed out, and it seemed like he just couldn't get past the left back. But like you said, he's coming back from injury. It's probably just like a fatigue thing. But Saka was good. Bellingham was good. Guehi, top tier. That was a great performance for the least experienced capped defender in that back line. He looked the most assured. I think Stones even had a few shaky moments, but Guehi looked really good. So big him up. But yeah, nothing from Foden. And I agree with you about the Kane thing. I'm being harsh. I don't think he had a great game. But again, I think that goes a bit more to the system, because he talked about it after in his post match and said kind of like he was told he needed to be higher up, he needed to occupy the centre backs, and if you look at it that way, I think he did a decent job. He won loads of fouls, he held up the ball generally pretty well, and like you said, when he had the chance, he was a goalkeeper's fingertips away from making it 2-0. So maybe I'm being harsh on him, but yeah, the build up was the best player in all these leagues. We wanted to see something, and it was only Bellingham that showed us something in that game. So yeah, a lot to improve on. But let's get into the preview then. England have got Denmark in the second game in the group. They're top right now because Slovenia and Denmark finished 1-1. Christian Eriksen scored. So big him up, United player. I think it was I saw the stat that it was 1,000 days after he collapsed in the last Euros. So big him up massively for that, because to address that trauma that he had from the last Euros, to score in the first game of this Euros is a good start. So big up Eriksen for that. But yeah, they didn't look very good in the rest of that game, and Slovenia probably looked like they were going to get the winner if any team was. But they're in joint second and third right now. What do you think is going to happen in that game, Johns? Do you expect England to get the W? And give us a cheeky prediction as well.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably line up the same. If I know anything about Southgate, is that he's relatively stubborn. So I think we're probably going to line up the same as we did. Unfortunately, right after my whole rant there, I don't think we should, but I think we will. And as a result, I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game for us, at least. But I do see us getting over the line. Right? I think we just got a bit more quality than them. I mean, there's a possibility for an upset because Denmark are not a bad team. They are good, and they are almost always considered to be like a dark horse in these kind of tournaments because they've been able to pull things out of the bag previously. But I think we'll be able to get over the line with them. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 England win. I think it could be a much more convincing performance if we just play maybe not all the stars, but the best system for our team. So if we do that, I could see it being a 3-0. But I just don't think we'll do that. So I'll go for a 2-1 England win, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game. I don't think it's going to be an exciting game either.
Yeah. It's so hard predicting England games. It's a very familiar feeling. I'm feeling from the season with United, not knowing which team's going to turn up. And it's kind of a travesty considering all the quality players England have in comparison to our squad at the moment. But I can see it going all those ways. I can see, a 0-0 ball draw like we saw against Scotland in the last Euros, or like we saw against USA in the last World Cup. I can see that happening. I can see us nicking another 1-0 win like we just did against Serbia, and it being like a game of moments, and one of the big guys steps up. But I could also just see, against the Scandinavian teams, we've generally been okay in the last Euros and, in the last World Cup. We've played Sweden, Denmark a few times and come out, victors in all of those. So I could see it also being like 2-0. I don't think it will be a thumping. I do think Denmark have looked a bit stinky recently, but I don't think they'll get hammered. I think they've got enough quality to keep it tight. But I agree with you. I think he's going to go with the same team. I don't think he'll make any changes. And I think we'll see something similar. And so I'm going to go England 1-0. I don't know if it will be Bellingham again, but it will be a moment of brilliance from someone or a penalty that will get England across the line. And if they do win, they're through. They'll qualify, and I'm pretty sure they'll qualify top as well now because of that last draw between these two. So, yeah, I think it will be I think this is just like the way tournament football goes. I'm not checking on the France score right now, but it was 1-0 and it was a pretty tight game last I saw. And apart from Germany, Scotland, where I feel like Scotland also shot themselves a bit in the foot and were pretty abysmal in that game, most games have been fairly lively and fairly tight, and I think a lot of the group stages will be like that. So I'm expecting, England 1-0. And let's say I'm going to go with Saka. Saka's going to score a goal in this one. And England are going to get just over the line. But yeah, you know what? Surprise me. Come on, England. Go out there and absolutely hammer them. That would be lovely. Wouldn't be bad if, Rasmus got a cheeky goal as well to just keep his confidence going. But as long as England win, I'm all good. All right, Johns, I think that we can wrap up the episode here. Let's hope England give us a bit more enthusiasm for next week's pod. and hopefully some of our predictions come true. But yeah, thanks for jumping on, Johns. Thanks everyone for watching, listening.
Cheers, Ant. Cheers, everyone.
Take care.
Sports Social Podcast Network.